one of the most important things to me is my family. And I had a 2-year-old that, we were wrestling on the ground at the time. And it was a week when I think we had 6 closings on the buy side of the sale side. And all 2-year-old boys want to do is wrestle, right? So we were wrestling on the ground, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and I remember he looked into my eyes and he said, "Daddy, it's okay." And I realized, crap, like this dude sees my stress, right? He is 2 years old, and 2-year-old boys are not known for being super emotionally perceptive. I would say that is not their strength. But I thought, man, if he can see this isn't working.
Welcome to the Threefold Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the podcast where you'll not only learn how you can achieve massive success in multifamily real estate investing, but also how you can simultaneously pursue great relationships with your family and a better walk with God. You can achieve financial freedom through real estate investing without sacrificing the relationships that mean the most to you. Now, here's your host, Lee Yoder.
Welcome back, Threefold listeners. I hope you're having a great week. We've got a great guest today I'm really excited about. Joe Huber is joining us from just up the road from where I'm at here in Cincinnati. He's up in Columbus. I've gotten to know Joe a little bit because we actually bought a deal from him. So that's interesting now that I think about it. I don't think I've ever had a guest on who I bought a deal from. So we'll get into that a little bit. But let me tell you a little bit about Joe, what he does, his background. He is the founder and principal of Huber Equity Group. Joe brings more than 9 years of real estate investment experience and has achieved a 100% profitable track record across 56 unique deals. Not bad, 56-0. At Huber Equity Group, he is responsible for equity relations, reviewing markets, overseeing asset management from acquisition to disposition, and directing company values and vision. Joe pushes his team to balance traditional best practices and innovative technological solutions to add value to every deal. He's passionate about providing accessible communities to residents, value to investors, and stabilize assets to the multifamily industry. Love that. I would say we couldn't say it better what we're trying to do here at Threefold, just trying to follow in Joe's footsteps here. But he's also committed to stewarding well the many gifts he has been given. Real estate is a tool to advance kingdom work. Joe and I definitely share that. He serves on the board of a local nonprofit that fights against childhood neglect and trauma and share the gospel of supporting families in crisis. Lives in Columbus with his wife, 9 years and 3 children. So Joe, awesome stuff. Yeah, you and I are really well aligned. That's why I'm so excited to talk with you today. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, Lee, thanks for having me, man. It's exciting to be a part of what you're doing. So
yeah,
that deal down in Cincinnati, it sounds like it's going well for you guys too. So
yeah, it is. I definitely want to get into that, Joe, because it's just really cool, like how you guys found it in the state that you got it in, and then what you were able to do with it. Kind of, I mean, I'll never forget like the way you explained. You're like, man, I feel like we did phase 1 of the repositioning, and it's up for somebody else to do phase 2 and phase 3. And I think you were dead on about that. You were so honest about what you guys had done, had seen, and it's really worked out that way, Joe. So that's proved true. I really want to get into that, but first, Joe, can you take us back? Just bring the listeners up to speed on like, how did you get into real estate? What were you doing before? What got you interested, and how'd you get started?
Yeah, so I was in sales before real estate. I was selling medical equipment. And I thought I was going to start collecting properties, right? Single family homes here, rent them, house hack, that kind of thing. Just the classic, retirement.
What made you think to do that?
I had some friends that were kind of just starting to do it, and a couple of friends that were a few years older and just starting to do it. It seems like it was working well, so sure, let's do it. Let's go for it.
Nice.
And so we had just finished paying off student loans and all of that, and I got laid off. And so it was, my wife and I were living really cheap at the time. She was a teacher, and I was living on her salary and using mine to pay off debt and that kind of thing. And so I just asked her. I said, "Hey, I might not earn income for a while, but I want to try this real estate thing. What do you think?" And at the time, my only goal was she wanted to stay home when we had kids. And so my only goal was to make 80 grand a year so she could stay home with kids. And that was like, that was the fire, right? Because that was like me being able to give her what she wanted out of life, what she wanted for her family and all of that. And so that fire was just, it had to succeed. There was no other option. Yep. So, started with a single family flip, in that first year, and then it was 3 single family flips and a duplex. And then the next year was 10 deals. And the year after that was 30 deals. Did a lot of small multi, 2 to 12 unit kind of deals. And then in 2019, really scaled up into 100 unit plus multifamily deals. And kind of our secret sauce, so to speak, is we find all our deals off market. So our team makes a ton of cold calls all across the Midwest and Southeast. So, right now between calls and texts, our team making about 150,000 calls and texts a year.
Jeez.
And so that gives us, we find a lot of deals that other people aren't looking at. And so that's kind of,
Yeah.
that's how we find deals. And so that started with, I just found this deal off market and, walking around a neighborhood in Columbus. And that was that first deal we bought. And I thought, I wonder if we could scale this. And so that's, ever since then, it's like, well, if it's still working, let's just do more of it. Right. If it ain't broke, do more
absolutely.
of it.
So yeah, I was going to ask you that, Joe, because that it does seem like that's often how it works is so many people start in single family homes and maybe small multis and cold calling and speaking to owners at that size is fairly common. There's a lot of wholesalers out there that do that, and then you can get deals from wholesalers because a lot of people are calling single family owners because, I guess maybe my thought there is just like, so often they need to sell for some reason. Like, if you get a divorce, if you want to move, you have to, you kind of have to sell your single family home and buy another one. But if you own an investment property, you don't necessarily. So it's like people move and trade more often so you can find those people. So you were doing that. I guess just tell us real quick, Joe, like, did that work out? So, I'm just wondering that story, you had this burning why. You started picking up these singles, you were flipping most of them, correct? But then were you building up a portfolio as well?
Yeah. So our motto was flip for cash, use our cash to buy cash flow. Right.
Awesome.
So the flipping was like a job and the cash flow was our investment.
Okay. So you were doing both. You're flipping.
We were doing both. We were doing both.
Yeah,
then we got to a point where we had about 80 units of scattered site multifamily, anywhere from 2 units to a 12 unit building.
That's awesome.
And it was going well, but it just became death by 1,000 cuts. Right. And so one of my one of the most important things to me is my family. And I had a 2-year-old that, we were wrestling on the ground at the time. And it was a week when I think we had 6 closings on the buy side of the sale side. And all 2-year-old boys want to do is wrestle, right? So we were wrestling on the ground and he put his hand on my shoulder and I remember he looked into my eyes and he said, Daddy, it's okay. And I realized, crap, like this dude sees my stress, right? He is 2 years old and 2-year-old boys are not known for being super emotionally perceptive. That's, I would say that is not their strength. And I thought, man, if he can see this isn't working. And so I knew I had these big goals, these big dreams, but also I felt like I was trying to go 100 miles an hour on a bicycle and that's just not going to work. And so that's when it was time to, we needed to reevaluate and sold the construction company and the property management firm and all of that to my partner. And just decided I was going to go all in on multifamily, right? We were going to try to do 100 unit plus deals and see if this cold call thing worked. And we've made a lot of cold calls over the years. We've kind of refined this and honed it down, but it started working. So we started buying, about 1,000 units later, about over 3 years, about 1,000 units later, it's we're still humming, doing our thing.
Yeah, so. Man, that's so powerful. Joe, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that story. I think it's very common. You talk about, you had this burning why and it's you and your wife. And so you just start, hustling. And it's one thing to do it when it's just you and your wife, right? I mean, I just think about when we were young, it's like, yeah, we can go to work. We can work 10 hours a day or whatever. Like, cause come home, and we got the evening together. We got a meal together. We can stay up late if we want, wake up early. We got the whole weekend. That's like kind of enough time for a husband and wife. You throw kids in the mix, it totally changed, right? Because now your kids want a ton of time. Like you said, all your 2-year-old wants like, I don't care about it. Like, I just want to wrestle and I want to do it every day. And I want tons of your time, Dad. And then you got a second kid. They want tons of your time. And then you still need to make time for your wife. So the game changes when you have kids, and it changes just for so many people. Just so often that's the turning point where people go, okay, what I've been doing is not going to work anymore. I guess, what is it about what you were doing at the time, Joe, with, hey, we're flipping, we're building a portfolio, but it's kind of this small stuff. And, we need to do 30 deals a year. I guess just tease that out a little bit where you're like, I can't keep doing this, even though obviously you were so successful at it, Joe. It was really going well, but it was requiring too much of your time to be able to be the dad and husband you want to be, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you're first getting started, you use the only resource you have, which is time, right? That's all you have. And so it's, everyone's on the spectrum of trading time for money or money for time, right? When when you hire someone to mow your lawn, you're trading it the other way, right? You're trading money to get back time that you didn't have and now you do have. And so I think it was really early on, it was trading time for money because that's what we could do. And that was in the form of finding deals and, raising the funds on those deals and laying out the plan and all of that. And we had some huge returns, right? Like 1,200 IRR, returns that people think are bonkers, but you buy something for $100,000 and sell it for 350, you put minimal work into it and you do it in 3 months. And that is a crazy return, but that's still only a couple $100,000, right? At the end of the day, which is great, but it's not, eventually we had to start going the other way where we're now trading money for more time, right? Trading, some wrote profitability for scalability. And so that's what it was. It was, if 30 deals is off the table, how do we do 5 deals a year and make it as profitable or more profitable than 30 deals? And so that was kind of what we looked at. And we looked at all the different asset classes, right? So I'm a huge data nerd, so we looked at apartments versus hotels versus office versus retail versus industrial, all of this. And what we found was the multifamily safety story is it's just amazing, right? Because it is such a safe investment. It's evergreen. It can't get, blackberried or blockbustered. It's not like it can go anywhere. Anyway, depending on who you read, we're 3 to 7 million housing units underbuilt. And I think that comes down to, the fact that blue collar labor construction, it's too expensive to build. And so we can't build cost effective. And so you can only build in class A. And it's just this whole story. It's not going anywhere because it's demographic and population trends. And so from that standpoint, I thought, well, this is, rents over any given 10-year period can't go down. So we've never lost investor money and we don't plan to. And so if you're going to do that, you might as well pick a really safe vehicle. So that's kind of, those are our decision-making process. We need to do less transactions. We don't want to have our goals shrink, right? We want to keep growing our goals and keep doing more stuff because, and I think it comes down to calling, right? I want to use the skills and gifts and talents I've been given and lay them at the foot of the throne because that's, it's everything I've been given is a gift, right? I didn't earn any of it. I didn't, do any of it. It's all a gift, right? And so I want to use that for the kingdom, so that's, that's how, that's kind of how that perfect storm pressure cooker led us to multifamily. It had an amazing team that was willing to take a risk and go get after it and go for it.
No, and what a gift kids are, right? Too, and you want to steward that gift well, and your wife, and that's got to take priority at some point. And sometimes when you're running on the hamster wheel so fast, and you need to do those 30 deals. And what I'm thinking too is you're explaining it, Joe, is like, there can be some big profits in flipping, but as soon as you stop or you take a break, it immediately stops. There's nothing else coming in, right? Like that's the problem with being, I think of like being self-employed. I had another guy I was interviewing the other day, and he was talking about the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki, and the employer and the self-employed are on the same side. Yeah, you probably have a lot more upside if you're self-employed. Like you can make some big money, but you're still on the employment side. You're not an investor. So you still are running on the hamster wheel. And a lot of times a lot harder because you're responsible for your income when you're self-employed instead of, when you're an employee, somebody else is responsible for making the money to pay you versus if you can move into an investor, for one, that's ideal. You can get, a lot more passive on that. But even as a business owner, put a team beside it. And that's what you started talking about, Joe, like getting this team involved and maybe structuring things in a way that you can step back and maybe be responsible for one part of it and use your unique gifts and talents and have a business that's running. So I know one thing that you spend a lot of time on is like identifying the market, where are we going to go? So you got this team now, you guys know, what you're doing, how to find good deals, how to underwrite them. How did you go? And because correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, the little stuff, the flips, the small portfolio, that was in Columbus, right? But as you built, now you want to go find some bigger stuff, find some apartment buildings. You started looking outside of Columbus. So that's a little bit different. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you identify good markets and then how the heck, do you get into that market, those things?
Yeah. So all the residential stuff was in Columbus. And then we did start looking, we started close to home. We started in Ohio, right? So we called Columbus, and then we started working our way through Cincinnati and Indianapolis and Dayton and staying close to home originally. But ultimately what led us to, the things that get us excited about markets are population growth, wage growth, job growth. If you have those three, you're going to have strong demand and you're going to have strong rental demand and strong rent growth. Those two are, hand in hand, right? Because ultimately people move to a place with jobs and then employers move to a place with people and then people move to a place with jobs. And you're going to either cycle up in this kind of upward tornado or cycle down where an employer is moving, so then people are moving, so then other employers are moving, so then people are moving. And so trying to catch that, tornado upwards instead of that tornado downwards. And not to say that there's not good deals to be had in those, flat markets or even, economically declining markets. There's opportunities there, right? Because whenever there's a seller that has to sell or just wants to get done, just wants to get out of it, they're done owning it, whatever. I mean, that's where the opportunity is. But ultimately it's that tailwind that gets us excited, right? It's buying in markets like Nashville. It's buying in markets like, Jacksonville, where we just sold a deal. I mean, when you have that kind of 2-3 times national average population growth, that's just going to go well for a multifamily holder over any given 3, 4,
Oh
5,
yeah.
10-year period.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think the other side of that is operations, Joe. So like, I feel like when you buy a property, you want that tailwind. I mean, I've heard people like, do you want to row downriver? I think I was talking about Brian Burke, and he wrote a book called The Hands Off Investor. It's really, really good. And he says like, you can either be rowing upriver. So if you're buying a declining market, you are trying to row against the current. So you can operate really well, but the current's working against you. So it's not good. You can row across a lake. And so it's just kind of steady. Maybe that's some of the Midwest markets, just nice and steady. And if you operate well and you row, you're going to make it across the lake, but you do have to work at it because there's no current. If you're rowing with the current, you operate well, it's going to help, but the current's helping you as well. And it just made me think of that as you're explaining that. You get in a good market.
I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think also the other thing to consider too is, I mean, that the cap rate differential between, Cleveland, which is losing a percent a year population, or Austin, which is gaining, 2-3% a year population, wherever it landed after, post COVID.
Yeah.
Austin deals were changing in the high 2 caps, right? And so now it's, post COVID world looks different, but at the same time, people in Cleveland were selling at 7 cap, right? We looked at 7.5, 8 cap and passed on the deal. So, while that's true, there is also a substantially different cash flow situation on those deals too.
Yes,
and so I think it's, we really try to look at a deal holistically, because it's not just the tailwind, it's the tailwind or the headwind and the basis, right? What are you buying it at? And then, where's your cash on cash going to land? But then how's that cash on cash going to grow, right? Because an 8% cash on cash in Raleigh, is not the same as an 8% cash on cash in Cleveland, because in Cleveland, it's going to be an 8% cash on cash next year. In Raleigh, it's going to be 11% because of the rent growth. It's just so we try to really take a holistic view of these deals, and it's it's a lot of moving pieces to juggle, but the information has never been more accessible than it is today, right? For $1,000 a month, you can get CoStar and get anything you could possibly want to know about a market, about a property, you could never go through all the data,
Right.
And so, we go through like I said, I'm a data nerd. So once a year, I export all of the data, twice a year this year, but export all the data, every market, and line them up and start getting feels for market, right? What's population growth? What's wage growth? What's job growth? Where are the rent growth in those trends, right? What's occupancy in these markets? What's the new build starts? What percent of, inventory is under construction? You got a market like Miami where 10% is coming online in the next year and 10% is new starts. They're adding 20% of market share, of unit count to the market in Miami. That's just a storm that any kind of downturn, and maybe that doesn't get absorbed, and there's just a lot going on. But you don't have that in Cleveland, right? So it's sometimes it's a holistic picture where you really have to look at all the pieces, and it's just not quite as simple as I think. A lot of people will just plug in 3% rent growth and onto the next tab, and I just don't know that it's that simple.
Oh man, no. So true, man. There is so much to look at, and job growth, population growth, and how they feed off of each other. So important to look at. Now, like you said, you might find some markets that are just kind of stagnant. That's okay, but know that and know what rent growth you're going to be expecting. Also know the cap rate. So you mentioned, the hotter markets, the cap rate is so much lower, and what that means to you and I, Joe, as value add investors, when you add value and the cap rate's that much lower, you're adding millions versus hundreds of thousands with a higher cap rate, right? So like you said, there's so many things to consider. But then I think,
but you may not be able to get the same leverage going in, because
no, absolutely. But then the other thing too is but what cap rate are you buying at? Because you look at some of those markets and it's like, cool. Yeah. Austin's a great market. Everybody knows it, but am I going to buy it at, 2.8 cap? Okay. There's some price that it doesn't make sense. So there's that. And then, like you said, the hottest markets are often the ones that the builders want to flock to and build to fill that need. And all of a sudden now it's overbuilt or whatever. So so much to look into. I think that's really important to bring that to light, especially for passive investors that may not, know a lot of these things. You better make sure your sponsor does, that you're working with somebody like Joe, that's looking into all these things. It's printing off all these reports from CoStar and going through this and picking out the market for you, because I think it's great to be a passive investor and work with someone like Joe that is doing this full time and has a team doing this full time, because there are so many things that go into it. And I so much agree with you, Joe, that when you line up the asset classes, I love multifamily. I'm all in on multifamily just like you. I think it's always going to be here. It doesn't mean you can't lose. You pay too much for a property, you don't operate it well, you are going to lose, even though multifamily, between you and I, it might be the best investment out there, but you still have to buy right. You still have to operate right. You have to finance right. And so it's so important to be working with somebody like you, Joe, that knows all these things, that invests so much time looking at all these things, because there's so much to know. And then it's changing, right? I mean, my gosh, this is a perfect example this year of how much things change. You got to constantly be evaluating these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the old saying is bet on the jockey, not the horse. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I agree, and I appreciate your kind words. It's
yeah, no, I mean it, man. I know a little bit about Joe as an operator, because, like I said, I bought a deal from him. I said we were going to talk about that. So just a quick story. We a lot of our listeners know that we bought a 95 unit in May of this year. We actually bought that from Joe and his group. They had bought it like a year and a half before that, Joe. You guys own it a little over a year?
About 18 months. Yeah,
okay, about a year and a half. Joe found that deal. I mean, you found a great deal, Joe, because you guys found, I mean, just in a lot of distress. Now, I'll say a great deal, like great opportunity, but a lot of work. I mean, you guys really, bought a distressed deal that was not operating well, very low rents, but, in a lot of residents you probably didn't want there. So, you guys really had to come in and get it cleaned up. And I mentioned at the beginning, you felt like you guys really did phase one, and I totally agree.
Yep.
And then you sold it to us, but maybe you mind just telling us a little bit about that, Joe, like a little bit of how you found it, but like why you liked it, and then what your guys' experience was with it.
Yeah. So that deal, Williams Point, was it was an interesting one, right? It was one of our first bigger deals, 100 unit-esque deal.
Yeah.
And it was a learning curve for us, right? We hired a management company that didn't get the job done, and then had to find a new management company that was better, right? There were roof leaks. There was a whole building down due to the worst bed bug infestation you could possibly imagine, right? People were non-complying, and then it was just a struggle all the way around, right?
Yep.
And so we had to vacate the whole building except for one resident, and just constant. It was constant battles, right? Roof leaks and trash issues, just people not picking up the trash, and balconies, and all kinds of stuff. And so we really, I felt like we took it from probably D to C. We probably moved it from D class to C class.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And did the first wave of renovation, added a little amenities, did a little bit in the leasing area, and really trying to start to tell the story of why this could be a great community to live in. Did some hallways, did some nicer renovations and a handful of units, and really started to show that value add story.
Yep.
And then for us, it was time to, we executed the business plan in about 18 months, and had to decide then, do we want to recap it or do we want to sell it? Right. And we bought the deal, I think it was $33,000 a door. And, and since, anywhere, but in Cincinnati, especially, that's a really, really low purchase price.
Phenomenal.
And then, we could do really well on it, selling it, and still leave a lot of meat on the bone for the next guy. We talked about a win-win, right?
Yes.
You guys gave us a price that we were thrilled with, and it's, I was just talking offline before this, you guys are bumping rents even farther beyond what we ever would have thought possible, so you guys are doing great on it too. And, and that required your energy and your effort and your capital to come in and, do another heavy lift. And exactly.
We brought in a $1.25 million rehab budget to, do the rest of the CapEx. And we did the windows, the decks, and just a bunch of units. Like you said, there's so much there to do, but it takes a lot of capital, but we borrowed that. So we were able to come in with some good cheap capital and recapitalize it, just like you said. And it's so funny. It's just interesting, Joe, listening to like your experience, because we've had a completely different experience with the property, because you did clean it up really well. So my goodness, talking about the bugs, the roof leaks, like non-compliance to trash, like I'm like, wow, we've experienced none of that. You guys did a really good job. It was good. I'll tell you, by the time we took over, I'd say like C plus, and yeah, we're excited. I think we're getting it to a B minus, maybe a B. It's not really a B area, so I don't know if we can call it like a B. It's just more rural. It's a nice area. It's just kind of rural. So, and we don't have the amenities and stuff like that, but man, it's so awesome. You guys really did do a great job on phase one, because we have not had some of those really nightmare issues that you guys did, because you cleaned it up.
I'm glad to hear it. What's so interesting is like you mentioned, it's a rural community. When we were trying to underwrite rents, it was impossible, because it is the biggest, 95 units is the biggest one in town. And so when you're doing your traditional comp shopping, there was nothing, right? We could find a duplex that was, and there's 150
Right.
unit across the street, and they were getting, I think, 750 for twos at the time. And we thought, oh, I guess 750 is what we can budget. I mean, my gut says it goes higher, but I guess we can budget 750 for twos and we'll see what happens. I think it was 760 or 759. And then by the end of it, I think we were getting $899, $999 for, twos, depending on basic versus premium. And you're getting $1,200 now, but for us, it was untested, right? He was getting $550 for twos and we had no idea where is the ceiling. Right. And so that for us, we wanted to come in with this much capital because we think we can get this much out of it on the back end. And then it was, there was more of a business plan proven out. That we could take that jump and then you could take the next jump. Yes. And we weren't willing to go from 1 to 3, at that time.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love what you guys did. And obviously you did very well and very well for your investors because you found a property, got in at a really good basis. Like you mentioned, really good, cheap price per door. But I mean, gosh, a lot of people would say, well, shoot, I don't want to deal with those issues. Well, then you don't get the benefit the way you and your team did, Joe, because you guys took on some serious and scary to some people issues. But that's where opportunity lies. I mean, if you're,
but it was learning too. I mean, we're taking on those same issues on another project and we're more equipped for them, because we handled it on this project, right? It's what you always learn. And then you have another arrow on the quiver.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, for us coming in, I mean, we knew where, a little bit of where you guys were. But I mean, it was like, hey, I don't care how much money Joe makes, like good for him, because I see the opportunity of phase 2 and phase 3. And I don't care about how much money us and our investors are going to make. And you said it was totally a win-win. But I just love that story because that's really kind of what I've seen a lot in multifamily, that there's so much out there. There's so much opportunity. You really should have an abundance mindset. It shouldn't be, a zero-sum game where it's like, well, if Joe's winning, then I'm losing. No, not at all. I mean, Joe, you and your team won. We're winning. I mean, if we keep doing well, like we haven't exited yet. So I want to call the score for us. You guys did win. We might win, but there's plenty of opportunity for us to win. Joe, let me transition a little bit. I always like to ask at the end, if somebody wants to maybe do a little bit of what you've done, what's a key ingredient to having success as a real estate investor?
I think that's a great question. I've been thinking about a lot with just being long-sighted, right? That over any given, I think so many people get into real estate because it's get rich quick, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is, I think your goal, whatever you're thinking of it, is far too small and your time horizon is also far too short.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
I think if you double and triple your time horizon for where you want to go, you're going to 10x or 100x what is possible. My only goal when I got into it was, like I said, make 80 grand a year so my wife could stay home with kids. That's what she wanted to do. And I wanted to empower her to do that. And it's so far beyond, I never would have dreamed, we've got teams doing what we're doing. And, 1,000 units felt like, I mean, that's felt impossible, but at that time I thought like 10, 10 units would be like arriving,
Yeah. And it is took, at that time, but yeah.
And it's
just so much more.
And then you set this new goal and then you dream a little bigger and all of that. But it's, I think if you can bring, tremendous focus and not get distracted and then do it over a really long time, you're just going to be better, because most people they get bored or they get shiny object syndrome or they chase something else and they get distracted and then they're out of the game. And all the skills they learned when they were right on the cusp of breakthrough never get applied.
Yeah, good point.
And I think especially in real estate, if you've got the real estate bug, then you can just stay really consistent, stay faithful, do the things that are going to grow you or going to put money in your pocket. And you do that over and over and over again, and you iterate it and innovate it and do all of that.
Oh, so true.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. I just think, I don't know who said it, Joe, maybe you do, but just a quote that like most people, and I think this is almost everybody, they overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in 3 or 5 or 10. And I think that's so true with real estate, especially. Like a lot of people, like you said, they want to jump in and like get rich quick. They heard of somebody flipping a house. They heard your story. You flipped a house, made a couple $100,000. I want to go do that. Well, that was a point in time when the market was super hot. Maybe that doesn't happen. But if you do stay with it, you are going to make good, really, really good money. You are going to do very well. But it could take a lot longer than you think. But you're probably going to, soar to much higher heights than you think if you do stick with it. But you're right, Joe. I mean, it's hard to do that. I think people get shiny object syndrome. I think they also get frustrated and get, just give up. But that's really good. Well, hey, I know family's important to you. We've talked about that throughout. I know you're a man of faith like I am. What's a key ingredient then, Joe? Or maybe give us something tactical that you do while you're trying to have success in real estate, what are you doing to make sure you're maintaining your priorities? What are you doing to make sure you're walking with Christ, you're honoring your wife, you're spending time with your kids? Like, what's something you're doing to maintain your priorities, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it comes down to the little disciplines, right? And having people in your life that you can say, hey, if I'm going the wrong direction, I want you to, punch me in the throat, right? Like I'm giving you permission to call me out if you see things that are off.
Yeah.
And also too, I mean, we have I talk to my wife about that a lot, right? I'm really passionate about this, right? I love this real estate thing, but also there are only two responsibilities that I have that no one else in the world can do. And that is father to his kids and husband to that woman, right?
Yeah, well said.
Everything else, someone else can do it, right? This company I love it. It's great. It's not unique. There will be other people, there will be other companies, but no one else can be a dad to those little guys. No one else can be, a husband to her, right? And so in that, I think that keeps me focused on family. And then also too, I mean, I just have a lot of dudes around me in my life that are, really, really faith focused. And so now, I think, you become like the 5 people you hang around with. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
But I think also too, keeping it in perspective, right? I mean, we have our core values on the wall behind me, right? And the first one is to whom much is given, much is expected. And so we've created that culture here that we are doing this and we're doing it to give. And I've set the expectation that when we have really big years, we're going to give more, and I'm not going to go buy some stupid car that I really don't need, right? I still drive the beat up old Kia with body damage because I don't care, right? I would rather be able to give more to these, organizations that are going to, impact the kingdom.
Drilling wells for people in Africa like you guys are doing.
Yeah. And sharing the gospel along with it. Right. And then helping families in crisis and getting them plugged into churches and helping avoid unnecessary foster care placements and that kind of stuff. So there's 2 organizations we're really passionate about, and our team knows it, right? So our culture and the people we've attracted are people that are excited about that. And so my hope and my expectation is that if I go rogue, this thing crumbles, right? Because I don't want the option to go rogue. I don't want the option to deviate from those values of what's really important, because that's not who I am,
Yeah. If you go rogue, your team might just kick you off the team, Joe.
I hope they do. It's encouraged, right? Like
I think they would.
No, I mean, like this is not. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about us. It's not about our company. It's about having a bigger impact. It's about kingdom.
That's awesome.
It's about giving. There's Revelation chapter 4 talks about the throne room of God, right? And all these elders are seated around, and they take their crowns off and they lay it at the foot of the throne, right? Those crowns have all been given to them, right? They didn't earn it. It was a gift. And so that's what we want to do. We want to take whatever we've been given and lay it at the foot. So
good stuff. Couldn't agree more. Well said. Well, one thing I like to do at the end too, any good book recommendations? And I don't do this all the time, but I would love if you got a good real estate or just business book, but then anything faith family.
Good book recommendations. So I've got a couple like on the business side of things that I've read over and over and over again.
Go-tos.
Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. Negotiating as we've been negotiating deals has been huge. EOS, Subtraction is the book. EOS it gave me a framework for how to build and scale a business. And then hiring, we're currently as a leadership team going through Who again. Jeff Smart and someone else I can't remember. And it's just how it's a process for hiring and bringing solid people into the organization. So those are 3.
That's good.
This one's faith family. Man, I'm on a C.S. Lewis kick. I'm going back through some old, just C.S. Lewis stuff. I got Audible, so I listened to Mere Christianity is an old favorite. So I've been getting a lot of that one lately. So
it's really good. Yeah, thank you for that, man. And hey, before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests, how might my listeners and I be praying for you in the coming weeks?
That's a great question, man. I would just say that just focus on what matters, right? I mean, the heart. I think that's always where I'm gonna ask for prayer, give me the opportunity. That just to be in a state of surrender and not, it's because so often you could do the same actions, and one is worship and the other is like self-worship, is idolatry, right? Like in one sense, I'm building this company and I can put me on the throne or I can put him on the throne. And the actions day to day oftentimes don't look that different. Right. It's still doing the things, it's getting up and dreaming big and focusing on what are the priorities, where can we grow, where can we improve? But it's the mindset in that. So
it's a hard
the
issue.
heart in that. So yeah, no, I'm always going to ask for prayer for the heart.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'd be happy to
Appreciate
pray
it.
for that. I
appreciate it, man.
I'd appreciate that as well. But yeah, we'll be praying for that. Well, good stuff, Joe. This has been so much fun, man. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time. It was just cool getting to know you as we bought a property from you. And I mean, you guys did a great job with it. So it was really fun learning from you today. Really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it, Lee. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us for another great episode. I hope you'll take action on what you've learned today. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving Lee a 5-star rating and review. And check him out on threefoldrei.com. Until next time, 1 Timothy 6:17.